With a continually expanding combat system, world-building investigations, and an action-packed story, Astral Chain proves to be a strong installment in Platinum Games' catalog. It makes ample use of legions as the foundational mechanic upon which the game's content is built, delivering an experience that is both familiar for fans of the genre, while also being something different from the studio's prior work. In addition to being a solid experience, Astral Chain also brings a lovable supporting cast, a good amount of side content, and an extensive number of challenges that will keep lovers of its combat and exploration coming back for more. Its complex and exciting gameplay continue to captivate me as I further hone the skills needed to stylishly tackle the more powerful enemies, and makes it perfect for action fans that are looking for something fresh. After an invasion of interdimensional beasts known as chimeras leaves humanity on the brink of ruin, the survivors retreat into hiding on the mobile megacity known as the Ark. However, after years of hiding, the chimeras begin to open gates in the Ark to the Astral Plane, kidnapping and corrupting civilians and causing mass destruction. During one of the attacks on the Ark, the protagonists and their sibling, as members of the police force, rush to the scene to protect people and fend off those corrupted by the invading chimeras. Unfortunately, chimeras soon begin to appear, which can't be seen by the naked eye. As the protagonist begins to lose ground, they are saved by members of Neuron, a branch of the police force tasked with combating the interdimensional creatures through the use of legions, chimeras that have been captured and bound to individual officers with chains through an apparatus known as the Legatus. The protagonist is gifted with a legion and, after taking care of the crisis, joins Neuron in their quest to fight the chimeras and discover how to end the invasion once and for all. The story is a decent length of around 20 hours and is filled with reveals that continue to carry it forward, with bits of character moments sprinkled in for good measure. While mostly being a darker tale about the near end of mankind, there are a fair number of lighthearted moments that aim to break up the looming despair. I especially enjoyed the character of Marie and her definitely not alter ego Lappy, who spent most of the game between missions cheering up my squad mates at HQ, and generally being a beacon of optimism. However, while most of the characters have potential, much of the team that is built up in the early game lose their relevance towards the end of the campaign, leaving only a few key players in the story, and the protagonist spending much of their time alone or with a single companion. I was hoping to bond more with Max, Jin, and Alicia, the three main supporting characters of Neuron, and their absence in the latter parts of the story left me feeling that I was playing another Chosen One narrative rather than that of a unified task force. Still, the story had enough intrigue to keep me playing, and it left me mostly satisfied by the end. Astral Chain's gameflow consists of large combat and exploration sections, broken up by moments of light detective work and side quests, which keeps things mostly fresh. Combat and exploration utilize the game's unique Legion mechanic, by providing a second controllable character at all times to perform combos and traverse the environment. The protagonist starts off with one Legion, but will have access to 5 by the end of the campaign, each offering distinct abilities, strengths, and weaknesses. For example, the Arrow Legion excels at fighting airborne and long-range enemies, but isn't as effective as the Sword Legion in up-close and personal encounters. Each Legion can be upgraded individually through skill trees, by gene codes collected from enemies, which unlock new abilities and race stats. Passive abilities can be further applied to the Legions to specialize them in different ways, such as adding an auto-heal ability to mitigate the need for healing items, or adding the ability to self-destruct when Legions run out of energy, laying the hurt on nearby enemies. In combat, Legions will act partially autonomously, attacking enemies that are in their range after the protagonist has positioned them. This helps to supplement the protagonist's own move pool, as they are limited to attacking with their X-Baton and dodging incoming attacks while issuing commands to the Legion. The X-Baton, for its part, has 3 modes. The default baton mode is great for dealing rapid strikes on fast enemies. The Blaster is excellent for range combat, and the Gladius function provides strong, albeit slow strikes that can heavily damage and stun foes. The chain connecting the protagonist to the Legion also plays a major role in combat, allowing quick traversal across the battlefield and providing a way to bind enemies and create openings. By far the most powerful tool is the Sync Attack, which allows the protagonist to strike in unison with their Legion for heavy damage, and quickly becomes the backbone of successful encounters. Additionally, both the X-Baton and the Legatus can be individually upgraded, making both you and your Legions more dangerous in the field. While it takes some getting used to, the combat in Astral Chain stands out as the highlight of the game, and only gets better as more options open up. Exploration is interesting as well, though not quite as expansive. The Ark is broken into separate zones, only a few of which are featured in the story. Each chapter will provide a block or so of the metropolis, which house quests, collectibles, and other side activities. Most of these areas are reused later in the campaign, though refreshed with different activities that reflect what's currently happening in the story. Time spent in missions outside of these zones will largely take place in the Astral Plane, which sadly lacks the architecture of the city areas in favor of blocky, bland-looking platforming and puzzle segments with large combat arenas interspersed. There's also the hub area of Neuron HQ that starts off most chapters and includes its own set activities, as well as Best Dog Lappy the mascot, and a toilet fairy and a never-ending search for toilet paper. Despite not being the most open of games, Astral Chain's locales do a great job of reflecting the fragility of this wavering society, as well as the darkness threatening to engulf the rest of humanity. As a member of the police, the protagonist will also spend time investigating the activities of the Chimeras. As a big fan of detective games, I was incredibly excited about this feature when it was first revealed. While it is an interesting component at first, investigations rarely require more than simply talking with everyone in the area and answering a list of questions based upon what they said. Though a bit disappointing, I did appreciate that it required me to pay attention to what was happening in each case and invest me further in the world. Overall, the investigations do a pretty good job of unraveling off-screen events to both the player and the police, and add to the atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. If we see a sequel, I hope that investigations get some additional development time, as I would love to see what could be done with this mechanic. One of the subtle enjoyments I had with Astral Chain was the various side quests and small things that could be done outside of progressing the story. Finding missing children, catching criminals, and even just cleaning up the streets by throwing away discarded cans went a long way in forwarding the theme of the police's duty to the citizens they protect. The best part is, being a good Samaritan is rewarded with duty points, which rank up the protagonist, so there was always a good reason to go out of the way and help everyone. There's a lot of side content here, and the quirky moments do well to provide levity to the story without ever seeming too overbearing or overwhelming. Much like Platinum's other action game Bayonetta, Astral Chain has a scoring system based on performance. Individual cases within a chapter receive their own rank, including investigations this time around, all of which get tallied at the end for an overall chapter evaluation. Unlike Bayonetta, this grading system does not account for the damage received during the course of a fight, but rather how tactical the approach to the encounter was. S ranks will require varied and thoughtful tactics, utilizing all the legions have to offer. I mostly started off getting Ds and Cs during every skirmish, only to improve once I had a better handle on directing my legion and syncing our attacks. Astral Chain also has an extensive list of recorded challenges that will keep fans busy long after the story ends. Completing the list will require exhausting everything the game has to offer, and then some. Each completed challenge provides an item reward, and I'm sure there's a ton of cool stuff to get even if I'm unlikely to finish it myself. Astral Chain offers an exciting new take on the action game genre, led predominantly by the inclusion of legions as an extension of the protagonist's moveset. The ever-expanding nature of combat gives the game a ton of replay value to try out new combinations of moves and abilities. While I may not have loved every minute of the campaign, I can't deny that I ended every chapter feeling satisfied and excited to see what would come next. I can easily see fans coming back to this game for better scores and additional challenges. However, I think my 30 hours with the game was enough to fill my craving for now. I hope we get to see more Astral Chain in the future, as I would be down for another adventure on the Ark. Just a little bit of post-review, off-the-cuff thoughts here. I wanted to thank everyone for watching this first review of mine. It means a lot to me. Obviously, I have a lot of stuff to improve upon. I already have a large list of such things, but any thoughts that you may have would be greatly appreciated. Feedback is always a good way for oneself to improve. And I hope you look forward to future reviews from myself. So until we meet again, farewell.